Crossing boulder fields like this is probably one of the most difficult and tiring aspects of crossing high alpine terrain. So in this video, I've got a couple of tips for you. Don't worry too much about where the trail is. You'll probably see a bunch of cans, those little piles of rocks around. Some of them will lead you in the wrong direction, but don't worry too much about where the path is. What I suggest you do instead is pick a point on the map that you can identify in your surroundings. For me, for example, there's a right-hand edge of this lake here is going to put me right back on where the trail begins again. So I'm going to glance every now and then to see that I'm going for the right heading, and mostly I'm going to be looking at my footwork. What I like to do is kind of just hop between boulders. I want to aim for the big ones. The big ones don't move very much. The small ones can be very deceiving. Sometimes they can totally flip on you, and the next thing you know, you've rolled your ankle and you'll end up in one of these little cracks. If you are choosing the smaller boulders, it's always best practice to actually check before you commit your entire weight to it to see if it's stable. Because sometimes they look stable, but they're definitely not. When I go over boulder fields, I'm not actually looking at my feet. I'm looking 2 or 3 boulders ahead and planning where I'm going to go. Sometimes you'll build up a little bit of momentum and you have to make really quick decisions. Sometimes you have to step on a small boulder that you're not sure is going to be stable or not. So in that case, be ready to pounce like a panther to another rock. Have a backup plan for your next step just in case it moves. If you've got trekking poles, feel free to use them. Sometimes I like to place my hand over the top of the pole, place both poles on the next boulder that I'm going to jump to, place my poles there first, and then follow through with my feet. That's a pretty safe way to make your way from one big boulder to the next, kind of like pole vault style. It does take a strong, sturdy trekking pole and a little bit of practice, but you'll get there. If you find the balance aspect of this the most difficult thing, then what you can do is actually work on that at home. One of the best things to do is just start with a 2x4 on the floor, barefoot, and walking up and down that. Later you can transition to balancing with a broomstick on the floor or a low handrail, maybe even a slack line eventually. And when you get really good, you can do a high handrail or even highlining. Also remember that your balance comes from 3 places. It comes from your head, it comes from your core, and also comes from strong feet. So make sure you're doing your training barefoot as often as possible. Some boulder fields can feel like they can go on for hours and hours and hours, but be patient, take rests if you need to, because it is something that really requires focus. You don't want to rush it. That's all for this one. Have fun, stay safe on the boulders. I'll see you on the summit.